This is the Cloud Security Today podcast, where leaders learn how to get cloud security done. And now your host, Matt Chiodi.
Hearing directly from practitioners on how they were able to help their organizations move from on-premises to the cloud, at least to me, is always interesting. On today's podcast, we have a special guest with Chavanne, who is currently a solutions architect at Palo Alto Networks in their Prisma Cloud team. And he's going to talk about his over 20 years of experience at HSBC. We're going to talk a little bit about his transition from the network side of the house to DevOps and cloud, and also just about how he was able to form a communities of practice group at HSBC to pull innovation from different pockets of the organization into a centralized group. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Again, we would love to hear your feedback. What is it that you want to learn about? What's important to you? Drop us an email. You can reach us at cloudsectoday@gmail.com. Again, cloudsectoday@gmail.com. John, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt, for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, your role at Palo Alto Networks. Let's just start there.
Yeah, so my role is a cloud security solutions architect. So I'm primarily focused on the Prisma Cloud platform, and I work on the channel team. So primary part of my role is enabling our partners, helping to build content to help them understand cloud security, as well as how you can protect against the security issues that are often found in cloud environments today.
That's awesome. That sounds like something that would be in pretty high demand.
Yes, no doubt. It's definitely in high demand right now. So, yeah, and really, I think what's exciting for me is to me, it still feels early days. I mean, we're, cloud's obviously, been around for a while now. Most companies are probably multi-cloud at this point. If not, they're going to be. And, it's really challenging. There's a lot of things to think about, especially, if you are going multi-cloud, right. It's no more just thinking about, what's in your on-prem environments, and, you gotta multiply that 2-3 times, to handle all these different public cloud environments. And it's a big challenge.
So let's start with your career arc. I love to go through kind of guest backgrounds. I think this is always interesting. So let's start with your career arc. You were at HSBC, which is a really large bank, for 23 years. 23 years is a long time.
It is.
Let's first talk about what kept you there, and then your transition from network technician to cloud DevOps engineer.
Yeah, I worked with a lot of great people. I made a lot of great friends. And by the way, I'm from Buffalo, New York. So, Buffalo is not a real big city, but it's, it's obviously on the map. We got some sports teams, but we, it's a tight community here. And I think, again, I made a lot of great friends. It always felt comfortable to work there, to work with other people that you can trust and, rely on and learn from. So that wasn't, an odd thing, I guess, for me to be there so long. But really what changed for me is, I worked my way up the technical ladder through networking. I was a global lead architect. So I was doing, design decisions and architectural decisions for my whole, or parts of my organization in the telecoms area. Which is great. But, around 2017, I really became interested in DevOps. There really wasn't too many people else I knew that were. And so for me, it was just something that I'm like, I really want to learn some new things. I'm totally into the way the DevOps mindset is, and, and the culture. And so as I started to kind of get into that, I started really getting into network automation. I picked up a training from a small company called Network to Code, who at the time actually was the only company offering that type of training. And then 2019 is when I really became interested in cloud. And once I learned how to build stuff in the cloud, like I was hooked. Like it was so much easier to do things. And I started really enabling myself. I started this cloud communities of practice group at HSBC. And then in 2020, early 2020, I got a new role on the GCP cloud engineering team as a DevOps engineer. And really, I never looked back. It felt like a pretty big career change for me at that point in time. And honestly, I'm a very curious person. I love to learn, and I felt like I was a kid again. It was just exciting to work on new stuff.
I love that. I love that. So you sound like you're a constant learner, right? You don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again.
No, I think my biggest fear in life is boredom. So
I can identify with that one. I'm on the same page as you. Now, I want to go back to one thing you said that I keyed in on, which was that you said that I think there were some things about cloud that it just made things easier. Like, do you have any examples? Like, what was something that maybe, you were used to doing on-prem that was a pain, and then when you moved to cloud, you're just like, it's just so much easier?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of small things that, trying to build infrastructure, especially, throughout my career, I was sometimes the bad guy because, we had to, application teams were waiting on us to get all the networking done and get approvals, and right, it slowed things down tremendously. And so, when you start to realize how easy it is to spin stuff up in the cloud, it's a no-brainer for me. Like, so just as a personal thing, I was, again, starting to get into things where I was building VMs on my laptop, but there's a lot of things to think about. There's a lot of things you got to do to make sure you get the networking right, to get the OS loaded, get a lot of things set up. That can take some time, and you can run into problems, right? And so in the cloud, you can kind of just pick and choose whatever you want. You can spin stuff up, spin it down. It's just really, really simple and fast.
What was the hardest part of the transition from network to DevOps cloud, and maybe what were some of the specific things you did to get started? And I asked this question, John, because I speak with a lot of different clients and customers around the globe, and there are people who are doing one thing, and they know that the future is cloud and they want to get there, but I think a lot of times they don't know where to start. So what was the hardest part of that transition for you, and maybe what were some of the things you did to get started?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll kind of separate it from DevOps and cloud, because I do kind of think, even though they fit together, they're two separate things. So number one, I would say is try not to get overwhelmed and distracted by all the tooling, because there is a ton of tooling out there. It definitely can be overwhelming, especially if you're coming from the infrastructure side like I did. I was not a dev. I didn't, do much coding or anything. So even just kind of learning how to do basic scripting and stuff like that was an area that I focused on early on. And then, look at there's a lot of material out there today that you can just go and look at. Like, try to find simple examples, whether it's on Medium or somebody's blog post or whatever. You don't have to try to learn, do it all at once, right? Just start with a simple example. The other great thing is that a lot of these, well, really all the cloud providers offer a free trial account. So just sign up for, pick a vendor, AWS, Azure, GCP, sign up for a free trial. And, maybe you get started in the console, which just to get you kind of your feet wet, and then try to learn something like Terraform. And just, you can just take a template off of Terraform's registry that'll tell you, okay, I'm just going to build an S3 bucket, or I'm just going to build a VM. Like, just copy that code, load down the Terraform binary somewhere on your laptop and see what happens. It's actually not that hard once you start to test the stuff out. But again, don't get overwhelmed by the tooling. Just start small, build something small, tear it down, and iterate on that.
I love it. I think you're right. I think what you're put another way is the fact that you can test things out in the cloud, and the price of failure is almost zero, right? Like, if you make a mistake, it's not like you're doing it on a test network inside of your on your internal network, where there might be this chance that it's connected to some other production system, right?
Yes.
So I think the barrier there is a lot lower.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the other advice I would give too is talk to other people that that have some experience. People in your organization. Again, just look online. There's so much resource out there. Don't be afraid to ask questions and just try to learn.
So it looks like you spent your last 18 months at HSBC knee deep in cloud. And, I think this is interesting because banks are notorious for being late adopters, especially when it comes to things like cloud. What were some of the key ways you were able to get the move to cloud started?
Yes, and HSBC traditionally very very conservative companies, so absolutely. It was interesting because at the time, this is going back probably 2017, I think. Our technical leadership really had a good vision and made a huge bet on the cloud. It was really really cool because for me at the time, I was also simultaneously learning about the cloud, and I got to be a part of that, so it really worked out well. And then the approach our company took was really to build a secure perimeter in our cloud environments and build direct links to our environment. So basically it was an extension of our data centers and our domestic network. We were very very strict about what cloud services we used. So nothing public facing was allowed at first, especially not APIs that turned down public services. So serverless, for example, was a big no-no. And we worked really closely with the CSPs to ensure certain levels of security were met before we would enable new services.
So I think those are some technical ways, right? And I think, what year was that? You said that was 17, 18?
Yeah, and really at that time it was still pretty early development. So
sure.
The other thing that happened is we brought in consultants. They built a basically team of external consultants that had experience already to kind of get started. So it started slow. I wasn't there in the very very beginning of it. Like I said, I was probably getting into cloud 2019, but it took time to be able to figure out what they were going to do, how they're going to build stuff. Obviously, security is a huge thing, right? So a lot of things just kind of started in external development environments to test stuff out before they actually started to put it together inside the bank. But once things got going, it really ramped up, and they brought in a lot more people, and it was fantastic, really, because it allowed application teams to start moving much faster than, again, going back to the example of how challenging it can be to build stuff in your on-prem environments and the delays that come with that. So lots of people got on board.
I'm curious, was that move to cloud, was that something that was led by like a CIO? Was that like a CIO level down type of thing?
Yeah,
okay.
Very senior leadership. Our top chief architect of the bank, our global chief architect, and those were big decisions that they said, yes, we're doing this.
Talk with us a little bit about, you mentioned it, but I want to maybe double click on it now, is that you talked about this cloud communities of practice group that you led. People from all over the company. It sounds like a great idea, but how did you move from talking about things to execution?
Yeah, it was certainly challenging in the beginning. We started as a very small group of mostly individuals who either had no to little experience in the cloud, but who, like me, were just very curious and interested in it. So we brought in guest speakers, sometimes individuals who successfully migrated or built a new application. But a central goal was always learning and sharing knowledge. So as time went on, the group grew and we shared more interesting things. I ensured it was always a safe place for anyone to join, so no matter their knowledge or experience. And it really helped empower a lot of folks to show off things they were working on and for others to see what was possible. And it allowed there to be this constant evolution of learning and growth for those that participated.
So it sounds like was it primarily an educational forum, or were you guys looking at trying to pull in where there was innovation happening in different pockets of HSBC? What were you guys looking for in terms of the outcome? And the reason I ask is that I think this idea of a communities of practice group, specifically around cloud, could be something that listeners are potentially hearing about and thinking, oh, that might be something we want to do in our organization.
Yeah, it goes against the norms, I guess, of most, the way things operate in a company. It was a very organic, very kind of free-flowing community group. And really it I really leading the group, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, it's just how I did it, but um I really tried hard not to make anything too formal. It was important for me to allow anybody to, again, come in the room. They could have had no experience, right? And to be able to learn. That was definitely number one. But what we did is when we had content to share, right? Let's say it was a demo that somebody did. They automated some stuff. Um, and that was kind of a common use case, right? A lot of what we talked about wasn't just cloud; it was also the DevOps pieces, right? So, okay, we're moving something to the cloud. How are we going to automate all this stuff? And they used existing tooling that we had in HSBC. They would talk about, here's all the kind of the processes and things that I had to go through to get approval on these toolings. Um, and what was awesome about that is once somebody shared that, right, they had those success stories. Now we had a pattern to work from, right? So other people that were part of that group, they might have been from completely different teams from different parts of the globe, who would have never talked to each other, but they just saw, hey, I just saw team, on the finance team, they just built this amazing, like, application and pipeline, and they're automating stuff. They're doing code changes twice a day. Like, that's amazing, right? They took that pattern then, which they would have never seen before, and now they're saying, like, I'm going to use the same thing. So the more that we shared that stuff, that to me was what really made it successful, because again, HSBC was, I think, 250,000 people. I mean, it's just insane,
Huge.
right? So sharing things across teams or across the globe just didn't happen. And this was, again, an opportunity for us to kind of take down all the borders and the walls. Like, there were no silos in this group. It was like anybody and everybody who's interested, come on and participate. And once word started to get out, that really, really, again, helped a lot of people pick up things that they might have spent another 6 months trying to build it the same way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Sure.
so for me, from an execution standpoint, it was more about just continuously learning, continuously making things easier for others, so they didn't repeat mistakes or struggle through, moving on and being able to do their work in the cloud.
I think that's something that is, I think, going to be useful to listeners, simply because, especially, the larger the organization, the harder it is to innovate. A lot of times, like, innovation happens in pockets.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And when you have these kind of informal communities of practice, that's where these ideas can really proliferate, right? And organizations that tend to be a little more conservative, like, hey, we don't want to be leading edge. We definitely don't want to be bleeding edge. This has been done. This has been proven elsewhere in the company. I think it lowers that barrier, right, of willing to try, and do things a new way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it allowed, again, because I purposely made it safe, like, to, if people spoke up, maybe that might not have spoken up to. And I think that was what was really, I have to say, I enjoyed it so much, because it was just a unique thing. My prior 20 years never got to do anything like that. It was a really cool thing to be a part of. And people really appreciated it. Like, it was always nice when somebody learned something that's like, oh my gosh, this would take me 6 months to do, like I said. So it's cool. It was very cool.
You mentioned that, I think if you mentioned it in this example, that when people were looking at maybe not necessarily cloud per se, but when they were doing some DevOps things with automation, using things like Terraform, did you guys, did you guys have a repository where you shared code? Like, what did that look like?
Well, as time went on, there were lots of repositories. So we did try, it's a bit tricky. We did have some central repos with Terraform templates that were kind of tested through some teams, as well as security that was approved. So so yes, we did have like some templates to work from, but even with those templates, obviously there's still going to be some fine tuning and some additional changes that might be
Sure.
unique to one department to another. But we did try to do that, and it definitely helped some groups. Some other groups felt like, I don't understand what I'm reading here, and so they started from scratch and built their own templates. But it definitely helped, and we tried to do this as much as possible. But even then, it's such a big organization. There were definitely groups that just decided to build their own things because they were still siloed, or maybe they had certain regulatory things that they had to abide by, and so they had stricter requirements when they're building their code versus somebody who is just building something that was fine to be public facing and didn't need all those security requirements. They're like, yeah, I don't want to do that, right? So you're going to have different opinions. I mean, anything you code or anything you build is always going to be opinionated. So but to answer your question, yeah, it helped to a certain degree, and I think people try to reuse stuff where they could, and the more that we were able to do that, it definitely made things easier for others.
Prisma Cloud secures infrastructure, applications, data, and entitlements across the world's largest clouds, all from a single unified solution. With a combination of cloud service provider APIs and a unified agent framework, users gain unmatched visibility and protection. Prisma Cloud also integrates with any continuous integration and continuous delivery workflow to secure cloud infrastructure and applications early in development. You can scan infrastructure as code templates, container images, serverless functions, and more while gaining powerful, full-stack runtime protection. This is unified security for DevOps and security teams. To find out more, go to prismacloud.io. So, 23 years, what would you say, what accomplishment are you most proud of during your time at HSBC?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to answer, right? 23 years. I had a lot of successful projects, even back early in my career that I was really proud of at the time. But I think, for me, the last few years, I think, where I was given the freedom to lead others through, my own influence, whereby I, successfully opened people's minds and enabled them to do things differently. Really for the betterment of the organization, but also of people's own careers. Leading the communities of practice group was, I would say, one of those efforts. I also spearheaded a network transformation effort in 2018, where I brought the concept of net DevOps to my entire global telecoms organization. That was like over 500 people. And what was cool about that is a lot of people told me they were, really inspired by it, including a lot of the management. And I'd say lastly, I went through a program that was internal to HSBC called the Enterprise Engineer Program. I was elected into that in 2019, and I felt very fortunate at the time to be elected into it. And at the end of that program, I actually was given the Enterprise Engineer Transformation Award, which I was only one of 5 people that actually in the entire company to receive it. So that felt really good, especially because it affirmed that even though my efforts to educate and inspire and influence others never really attached any specific performance goals, the positive impacts I was having on others and the organization was really being recognized by senior leadership.
So let's fast forward to today. So you're a solutions architect with Palo Alto Networks, and you focus on the Prisma Cloud side of things. Prisma Cloud is a cloud-native application protection platform. Where do you see, this whole category of CNAP has gotten very popular over the last 3 years, and I constantly work with clients all over the globe who are looking at not just Prisma Cloud, but they're looking across the board at all the other players in that space. But from your perspective, you've helped a lot of customers. Where do you see them struggle most when deploying the platform, and what have you seen be most helpful in overcoming those challenges?
Yeah, and it's a big platform, so there's so much you can do with it, and I think sometimes customers aren't aware of many of the features, and so they don't fully operationalize it. So I'd say the most successful customers that I've seen really embrace it though, and they invest their time and their staff to upskill them and have goals to drive efficiencies that align with their business goals of moving to the cloud, and obviously taking advantage of why you're going to the cloud, right? Increasing speed and scale with their code deployments. So organizations that recognize that get tremendous value out of Prisma Cloud, because there's even proof in the Forrester report that we have up on our website that surveyed some of our customers. We're talking less than 6 months payback on the tool, and I think it was 276 ROI. So massive efficiency gains in both DevOps and SecOps teams. And I really urge any existing or new customer to read that report. And you have to think of, like, security doesn't have to stand in your way. I think that's sometimes scary for a lot of folks. It's like, there's so much to worry about in in the world with cybersecurity and so forth. But Prisma Cloud really allows you to embrace security and bake it into your code and processes that gets your teams moving fast and safe. And so if you can look at that at that kind of higher picture view, you're going to really see the opportunities that you can get out of using Prisma Cloud as an entire platform. And again, it really helps to get everything from all the way from the left, your developers and your devs and your DevOps engineers, to bake stuff in early on, and it gets those efficiency gains again, because your SecOps teams isn't getting flooded with alerts, and kind of builds that communication between the two groups without actually having to send nasty emails or spreadsheets of alerts or whatever, right? So to me, it's really getting the organization bought in, and kind of bring a top-down approach to get everybody to be on board.
Have you seen challenges with deployment of whether it's Prisma Cloud or whether it's any other type of cloud-native application protection platform? Have you seen issues with organizations where the deployment is not necessarily the technology, but it's more organizational, whether it be ownership? I think you mentioned that Prisma Cloud, the platform itself, has expanded greatly over the last 3+ years, right? Where if you probably went back 3 years ago, it would have just focused on CSPM, right? Cloud Security Posture Management, where now it's covering pretty much every area of cloud security. Where does ownership and let's take the technical piece out of it, right? Where does kind of ownership and the organizational struggles usually come in when someone is trying to deploy a platform like that?
Yeah, I think it's, again, if you don't have good leadership, right? So let's just say it's a security team that buys the product, and they're focused on CSPM or CWP, which is our cloud workload protection. If that's all they're thinking about, then they're looking at is runtime, right? So they're focused on, okay, I got runtime alerts, I want to see visibility of runtime, and all they're doing is throwing things back over the fence to the devs and DevOps engineers. Hey, go fix this, go fix this, go fix this, right? Devs and DevOps engineers don't want to keep hearing they've done things wrong, right? Who does, right? It's like, so from an organization standpoint, you need somebody who can lead and bring those two teams together, right? And say, listen, here Prisma Cloud is an example, right? And this could be on any other CNAP, but I think we do a really good job of this, is that we have a platform here that can help both sides. If we're kind of talking again, our DevOps folks and devs and our security operations folks. If I'm a developer and I'm a DevOps engineer, and I can take security templates, or bake security into my code right in the beginning, I'm excited about that, because that means that's every fix I make early on, that's less of an issue, or one less alert I'm going to get each time, right? So, and the security operations folks are excited because they're like, well, great, you're fixing these issues. That's one less alert I have to look at, right? And the last time, because who wants to keep throwing stuff over the fence, right? That's not something that anybody really wants to do. So once you start to get common ground there and start to realize like how you can use this platform again to help your whole organization, all you really need then is just leadership to say, listen, this is our vision. This is what we want to do. We're going to make this better for all you guys. And, here's why, right? And you explain that. To me, that's where an organization is going to be successful. And you're building code faster. You're putting your applications out there faster. There's business benefits to all of this.
So if a listener is thinking about deploying a CNAP, where should they start? How do they go about getting all the right teams lined up organizationally? What does that look like? What do you recommend based upon your experience?
Yeah, it's not easy. I think the larger the organization, the harder that's going to be. I mean, speaking from my experience at HSBC, that's tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's you got to get. But I'll go back to our senior leadership's decision to move to the cloud in the first place at HSBC, right? You had senior leadership that says, this is what we're going to do. And you bring people in and this is our vision, and this is our, where we want to go. And I can tell you, there was a lot of excitement when that type of decision was made, and senior leadership was the ones that were saying, we're going to do this. I think you have to take the same approach. You've got to, teams shouldn't just find something that they like, and say, okay, I want to do this for my team, and then only kind of keep it to themselves, right? I've seen a lot of that where, if I, again, go back to my GCP engineering team, if that's all we did was just pick something that worked for our own selves and only did it for GCP, then we're leaving a lot of other folks out, because what's going to happen is then another team's going to do the same thing and they pick something different. All of a sudden now you got two different tools, and then the Azure team's going to do something, they pick another tool, and then, it's very inefficient, right? So, be courageous. I think if you're in those teams and you're bringing, if you're one who's looking at technical solutions and you want to be able to do something that you think can help your organization, speak up, escalate that up and say, look, this isn't just for us. This could help everybody, because what are you going to do? You're going to benefit your organization. Let's face it, that could turn into better revenues if you're building, things more efficiently, if you're able to move your code faster and get your product out there faster. So, think big is what I would say, and get buy-in as much as you can.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a matter of, if someone's trying to deploy a platform, a cloud native application protection platform that is kind of holistic and it covers all these different areas, it's naturally going to span multiple teams, right? There's going to be things in there. It may look primarily like it is for security, but as you mentioned, right, DevOps teams, it seems like there would also be benefits in there for those teams as well. So it sounds like it's a matter of aligning priorities, right? Because a DevOps team may have a different set of priorities than a security team. But at the end of the day, I think if there's maybe a way to align those and perhaps put some metrics around them, it may become more straightforward. I won't say easy, but it may become more straightforward in terms of how to deploy a comprehensive platform like that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think metrics, you can easily align metrics to these things because, again, I would say if you're in a state of where right now, every time somebody does a deployment, they've got to go through that deployment, alerts happen, security operations team picks that up maybe a day, 2 days later,
or a week or two,
or a week or two,
or not at all, right?
opens up a ticket, that goes back to the team. There's another week that goes by, they fix it. So it's terrible, and I saw that, that was not an uncommon thing to see where, and all of a sudden it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before things get fixed, and it just slows everything down, right? So if you can fix that, I mean, literally, I think what's amazing about our platform is you can use it right in your IDE, do a scan that takes 10, 30, 20 seconds, find remediations right there. You save so much time. So to me, absolutely build metrics around okay, where are we at today? And see what starts to happen. I think you'd be quite surprised how much you can improve on those metrics once you start getting folks bought into the process and using the platform.
So you mentioned that you get bored easily. It's one of your greatest fears. So tell us and your listeners, how do you stay sharp? How do you stay fresh? Maybe what are some books, podcasts that you would recommend to the audience, and why?
Yeah, it's I I'm constantly looking at different things. But if I were to pick maybe a book, I'll kind of start from the ground up. So we're talking DevOps. Honestly, my personal favorite is the Toyota way, and I think for me, it's kind of the basis for DevOps and shift left. I actually like to simplify, some of its key concepts and really apply it to all sorts of things in life. In fact, I don't know if anyone's ever said this before, but I personally use the phrase shift left life because every time I make a major purchase decision, I kind of use this philosophy. And if you read the book, you should walk away from it, remembering I think two key words, which is reduce waste and build habits that reduce waste, right? So waste can be time, waste can be repeated maintenance, waste can be all sorts of, manual processes, waste can be security alerts, patching vulnerabilities, automate processes and bake security as far left as possible. Also use tools that cover large numbers of use cases and make it easier for yourself. So, the better you get at reducing waste, the better at DevOps and DevSecOps you're going to be. And the second thing I would say is, actually, I'm gonna use a learning platform. So, Code Cloud, which is spelled with 2 Ks, is by far, I think, the best DevOps learning platform out there. I used it for both my two Kubernetes certifications. It was excellent, and I'm a firm believer in learning by doing, and Code Cloud just executes that perfectly. So, honestly, I've never really learned so fast with anything before, and Kubernetes is a complicated topic, right? So there's also a lot of noise out there on learning, and unfortunately not all good content. So the Code Cloud folks, to me, just are experts at teaching you many of today's key DevOps skills, and through simplifying complex topics and reinforcing learning through repeated hands-on practice. And they've added a whole bunch of other new courses. I just actually took a Helm course, which is great. I plan on taking my CKS course through them, and they've got an Istio course. So there's all sorts of cool things. But by far and away, take a look at them. They've got tons of great reviews because you definitely want hands-on and practice with stuff, and they're great at that. And then lastly, I'm going to pick a book on Kubernetes itself. It's a book called Kubernetes, an Enterprise Guide by Scott Surovich and Mark Borstein. You can find it on Amazon. In fact, they just released their 2nd edition. And this book is more for advanced users for deploying Kubernetes at scale in the enterprise, but made simple by these guys. And it goes well beyond what you would typically find anywhere else, and covers some really important topics for enterprise folks, like internal and global load balancing, external DNS, authentication, RBAC, auditing, using Open Policy Agent, Istio, and deploying an entire GitOps platform with CI/CD.
So if our listeners want to connect with you, if they want to find you online, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, funny you should ask that, because working for a large global bank for so many years, I was trained to not share much publicly. I'm also an introvert, but I would say by far I use LinkedIn more than any other platform. So just search my name to connect with me, or send me a message if you like. And you can also find me on Twitter at JJ Chavanne. That's JJCHAVANNE. But you might be disappointed because I think I have like 2 followers. so if at least 2 of you out there decide to connect with me, you could double my following overnight. So maybe if that happened, I'll start using it more. And but yeah, I'm still getting used to not working for a big bank. So
well, John, it's been awesome having you on the podcast today. I appreciate your insights. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. I really enjoyed this too.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. To find out more, please visit us at cloudsecuritytoday.com.